Hey, what's happening, my man? How you doing, brother? Yeah. Man, when Sean and Joni are good friends of ours, they introduced us. And for those of you watching, you're going to hear a great story. You're sideways now for some reason on your phone. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So we'll let people start jumping on. I know a lot of people know you, but yeah, you're a player, and I definitely want to hear your story. I want people to hear. You got just an inspiring deal that you do. So for those of you that are watching us, welcome today, Bigger Pockets Think Tank, and wherever you're. Oh, damn! All right, so wherever you're watching us from, make sure you. I know we all give problems, right? Wherever you're watching us from, let us know where you're at. I'd be curious where you're watching, where you're calling from, all that kind of stuff. And give us a thumbs up if obviously Facebook likes this. So Instagram like this, everyone likes this. The more thumbs up you get. Tim, can they hear you? Someone's saying they can't hear you. Did you? Yep, I can hear you. But you got to turn. Did you mute your microphone on Facebook? I think you muted it. Just need to turn the volume down, not mute it. On your laptop.
There you go. What's up?
There you go. Now you got it, man. Now you got it. See, it's a little bit different than what we do.
I'm a real estate guy, man. What do you want from me?
I know, man. I know. Trust me. This was not easy figuring out how to get on it, which is
you want me to raise tens of $1 million? Done. If you want me to go and find 2,000 units, done. Right? Like I can't. I don't know how to do this stuff though.
I'm with you, man. And you would think Facebook and Instagram, since they're owned by the same company, that they would work together, but they don't. So that's another conversation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a wild ride today. My good friend Tim is here. I'm not even going to begin to. This guy's like an onion, right? People say I have a lot of layers. I think this guy has more layers than me, right? And so for those of you that are going to have questions, make sure you put them in the chat. We're going to do our best to answer them for you. This is live Q&A. This only works if you guys ask questions. I mean, I can ask him a lot of questions, but I already know him. This is for you guys, and this is your chance to get into the brain of this guy and really ask him questions. And how do you build wealth? How do you pass it down to your children? How do you have the right mindset? That's what today is for. So take advantage of this. Ask us questions. If they're good questions, we're going to answer them. If they're stupid questions, we probably won't answer them and we'll ignore them. So that's how we're going to do it. So, Tim, first of all, man, thank you so much for being here today, brother. I really, really appreciate you giving us the time.
Dude, super excited to be here. Super excited to. I've been wanting to be on the Bigger Pockets podcast for a long time, and I haven't been able to. You guys never invited me out, so I'm excited that I finally crossed the threshold in order to get an invitation from you guys.
Awesome. So, real quick, they're saying they have some feedback. I have you mute while Steve is. Oh, okay. So I
just changed it up, so we're all good. We're all good to go now.
All right. Cool. All right. So yes, you are officially here, man. I want to hear the story. Everyone knows you. I got all these people giving you thumbs up. Obviously, you seem to know a few people in real estate. Maybe you've been doing this for a minute or so. So, first of all, tell everybody who you are and just give your resume, and let's kind of get into it, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me, dude. I got a ton of respect for you. I know we see eye to eye on a lot of things, and we're big into mindset. We're big into personal development, and really appreciate all the value that you're always putting out there and giving and not just taking, right? So appreciate you, man. Have a ton of respect for you. So it's a huge honor to be here.
Thanks.
Yeah, bro. So I'm a kid from Cleveland, Ohio, right? I am from a suburban Cleveland blue collar town, and I'm 35 years old today. Today I own a little over 4,000 apartments, 4,288 doors, about $335 million portfolio value. But I didn't start there, right? Like I started going through college 03 to 07. The market was going crazy. Everybody's making money in real estate. If you want to make money, you got involved in real estate. So I'm a money hungry kid at 20 years old, and that was the path that I pursued. So I ended up starting a painting company in college, and I worked for one of these college painting companies. I then had my own the next year, and then all of a sudden I worked for a big home builder and learned a little bit about real estate sales and all that kind of stuff. They ended up offering me a job after college graduation. So when I graduated in 2007, though, my brother was living out in New York City, and I wanted to go out to New York City and get involved in real estate out there. And so I moved out to New York City, and I thought you got involved in real estate by becoming a real estate agent. So got my real estate license, went to work with a brokerage, and I ended up parking my license with a commercial brokerage instead of a residential. I don't even know why, but I ended up doing leasing for retail businesses and for offices, and we ended up not really, like I saw some investment sales. I wasn't really involved in like the sales of big commercial buildings or anything like that, but I brokered a small deal, a small lease on a 400 square foot retail space in Manhattan. And on that 400 square foot lease, it was a $10,000 a month lease term over a 12-year term with 4% annual increases. And I remember like doing the math as, you know, I was 22 years old at that time. And I remember doing the math on this thinking like this landlord is going to make almost $2 million over the next 10 years, 12 years.
Welcome to New York.
For doing something at one point in time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he had 7 different retail spaces, and there were 10 stories of apartments above it. And I'm like, dude, I'm on the wrong side of the coin. I need to be owning real estate, not brokering real estate. And so, you know, it was kind of crappy weather up in New York that winter. And I was like, I want to move down south. I can't afford anything in New York because everything's too expensive. So like, I need to get involved in the investment side. I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I'm at right now. And, got involved in investing. Now this is 2008. I go through the whole, you know, the phase of analysis paralysis that I think a lot of people go through when they're trying to get involved in real estate. You're like, I got to read everything. I got to learn everything before I do anything. And, you know, to me, that's kind of like learning how to swim without getting in the water. They're like trying to read about swimming in a book. And the best way to learn how to swim is by jumping in the water and just doing the activity. And I think real estate's the exact same way. You got to go out and just do a deal. Whenever, you know, somebody comes to me and they hit me up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and they send me messages and they're like, how do I get started? I was like, just do a deal. I don't care if it's a single family, a duplex, or a 20-unit building. Just go out and do it and get the momentum going. You're going to learn more from that first deal than you will from anything else. And so, you know, I finally realized that in late 2008, and all of a sudden the entire market starts collapsing, right? So this is October, and Lehman Brothers are going out of business. The housing market collapses. I show up to the party, and I'm like, everybody's running out the back door. I was like, where's everybody going? I just got here. And they're like, run from real estate. Don't do real estate. And it was kind of unique timing where, like, all of a sudden, by the time I was ready to buy a deal, which was early 2009, dude, bank-owned properties everywhere. You could buy whatever you wanted on the MLS, and you could make whatever offer you wanted without offending anybody. And that's what I ended up doing. I went and found the cheapest house in the entire MLS. It was listed for $25,000 in March of 2009 now. And I start making offers. And so I made an offer. No, here's good part, bad part. Good news is the house was 25 grand. Bad news is nobody's lending on real estate. Nope, yep. Especially in that market, especially to a punk 22-year-old kid, especially to somebody who's never done a real estate deal before, right? So I had to get creative. I think a lot of people say nobody's going to give me money and I can't do anything, and their brain just shuts off. I heard Tony Robbins say one time, he goes, resourcefulness is the ultimate resource. And that really resonated with me. And he's like, it doesn't matter if you don't have the time or you don't have the money or you don't have the knowledge or the expertise. If you are resourceful, you can go out and get any one of those things. And I've always just kind of like asked myself questions. I've thought, hey, if I can't get the money, where could I get it? You know, who does have money? And I think when you ask yourself a question instead of making a statement, all of a sudden it leads you down a path of either more questions or better answers and more of like get your creative juices flowing in your brain. And so for me, I ended up saying, where could I get the money from? And all my buddies were drunk in bars, spending all their first year salaries, you know, on booze and chasing girls, right? And then I had, you know, my family isn't going to give me any money because they know me from partying in college and toilet papering houses in high school. They're not interested in being their experiment with their money. And so I had this one guy named MasterCard. He's like, hey, he was giving me $3,000 already, and so I called up my credit card company. I was like, if I'm about to make a big purchase, can you increase my limit? And they ended up. I asked for $100,000. They laughed me off the call, and then I asked, well, how much can you give me? They give me 15 grand. And so I bought my first house. It was a little dumpy duplex in the hood of North Charleston, South Carolina, 2677 Tillman Street. If you want to look it up, for $14,000. I made a lowball offer. The most I could offer was 14 grand, and that's what I ended up closing on it for. And then I physically did all the work, right? So I did the paint and the flooring and the fixtures and the landscaping, and really just put lipstick on a pig. This thing was horrible before, and it was just as horrible afterwards, just looked a little bit nicer. And I ended up hosting an open house, and one of the neighbors came in and bought it for $33,000. So I made, 13, 14 grand on it when it was all said and done. And I think I'm a genius. I'm going to make some money and let me go do it again. Then I got into wholesaling, and then I found a lot of good deals. And again, I come from the residential world, so I did all residential real estate until it came to a point where I got some private money. People said, hey, I have money, but I don't have the expertise or the time or the bandwidth to take on these deals. Tim, why don't you go do those deals and we'll come up with some sort of equity split. So went down that road, and eventually in 2012 came across my first apartment building, and I bought an 8-unit apartment building right around Christmas time of 2012. And then I just love the scale of it. I love that I could go to one location and collect rents instead of 8 locations and collect rents. I love that I looked at one roof instead of 8 roofs. I negotiated with one seller instead of 8 sellers. And there was just a lot more scale in owning and managing an apartment building. And that's what I really started focusing on. So, had some exclusive partners. That partnership ended up kind of going south in 2015, and we liquidated everything. And I had to start again, press the reset button in 2015. But it was kind of one of those things where it's like you think it's a setback, but it's really a set up for something better. And it positioned me for where I am today. So just kind of put my head down, went back to work. I did some single family turnkey flips, built up a management company, and then was buying commercial real estate apartment buildings for a few years. And by late 2017, I just realized all my wealth was being built in my apartments, and it was like 10% of my time. And I just pivoted and moved the entire operation to buying apartments. And, I had this big jump in what you focus on expands. And that's what ended up happening. And I just focused on apartments. And today we're at a little over 4,000 doors and overnight success, right?
Yeah. 15 years in the making, overnight success, right? So I as you were talking, I was kind of making these mental marks of things that you were saying that I would kind of like to go back to. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is, and I was involved in the whole 2008 crash and all the drama that happened. And one thing that I've learned is that so many people were so afraid to take action during that time frame. Mm-hmm. Hey man, don't let the phone, you can win. Don't let it beat you. The ones on Instagram can see that he keeps dropping the phone. Facebook doesn't see it, but I owned a property management company that was purchased by a larger company. The 2 gentlemen that purchased my company during this same time frame in the Bay Area started purchasing properties, same as you did. They ended up growing to 17,000 properties that they purchased, became the first single family REIT, and went public. And everybody said to them, you guys are crazy. What are you doing? And they're like, this house was $400,000 6 months ago. It's now 70,000. You can't tell me that that's not going to go back at some point. The math doesn't. And everybody they were basically shunned from their investor community because of what they were doing. And that was their momentum. And the one thing I would say that I've learned in what you did is, look, it's not going to be pretty and you're probably going to suck at it, but taking action and taking that first step, people do not understand how vital that is. We can talk ourselves out of any deal, and we can make any deal look horrible that keeps us sitting on the couch, right? And so my question to you is we may be going in that way again. Nobody knows, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. Everyone tells me why we will, why we won't. I don't know, right? Nobody knows that answer. But what would you say to maybe the person that's you, right? 10, 12 years ago, back in 2008, if this cycle does happen again, what advice would you say to that person if you were talking to yourself again to get that action and momentum going so that they can be, a Tim in 12 years from now?
I think that's a fantastic question. For me, I've found that there's a lot of things that people do in real estate that are not revenue generating activities, and they just kind of fill up their time. And activity doesn't equal productivity, right? Like there's certain things that you should be doing or not doing in order to generate revenue. And so I think in real estate, as real estate investors, the only things that matter. I want to make sure that this phone battery is going to die. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like technologically a total moron. But the only two things that really matter in doing deals is raising money and sourcing deals. If you're not prospecting for deals every single day, and you're not prospecting for money every single day, it's going to be very hard to do deals. Back when I got started, deals were easy, right? That was easy to come by. Money was very, very difficult. Today, it's a different angle. Today, deals are hard to come by and money is easy to come by. And I think that's a very cyclical thing. So if you learn the process on how to source great deals and how to raise money, I think you can have a lot of success in real estate, regardless of what's going on with the market and the economy and what's happening. So that's the first thing I would say. Second thing is, I remember looking back at 2008, 2009, when I first got involved in real estate, and there were some people who were worth millions of dollars before the market crashed, and then all of a sudden, the market crashed and they went to zero. They were worth nothing. They went bankrupt. And then there were other people who that same exact market happened to, and they were able to not only survive but thrive in the marketplace. And I remember thinking, like, dude, the same market happened to everybody. The same economy happened to everybody. What's the difference between why some people were able to survive and some people, sank versus swim, and it went back to, like, what were they investing in? What were the risk mitigation strategies? What was their business model? What was their business plan? And I found that it boiled down to a couple of bullet points. And my business today is based on watching what happened previously to make sure that never happens to me. And so the first thing is always buy at a wholesale price. Never pay retail for anything. I don't pay retail for my clothes. I don't pay retail for my watches. I don't pay retail for my cars. And I definitely don't pay it for my real estate. Number two is create appreciation. Never speculate on appreciation. Don't buy at a retail price today, hoping tomorrow the value is going to be higher. Buy at a wholesale price today and then create appreciation through putting sweat equity into the property, by doing value add, by improving the units and increasing the income, decreasing the expenses, and force the appreciation. Don't pray and hope and wait for it. Like, if it happens naturally, also great, but don't ever just bank on appreciation and do a deal for that. So that's number two. Number three is I like buying for cash flow. I was never good at flipping houses. I was never good at that side of things. And I really was stressed whenever I flipped houses, because every time that I went to go flip a house and it sat on the market, it took money out of my pocket every single month. It was very stressful until it sold. And then I had a big windfall of cash, and then I go do it again. But when I started flipping turnkey houses, when I started flipping apartment buildings, that if I got my price, great. If I didn't, I could just sit on it and let it cash flow, and I wasn't stressed from the holding costs and the carrying costs of having that deal. So for me, I really always buy for cash flow as well. It has to have some sort of cash flow component. If I can't somehow cash flow it, if the market does take a dump, like, I won't do that deal. And then what else? What else do I do? Financing terms, making sure I have proper financing terms, and the bank can't just call the loan due at any given time. Things along those lines. Like, those are really the big three, or the first three that I mentioned. And there's a handful of other ones that I do that I follow as well. But for the most part, man, like, understanding what revenue generating activities are, focusing on those revenue generating activities, and then also having these certain risk mitigation strategies in place for your business will eliminate a lot of the downside risk. And I 100% agree. Like, dude, nobody knows what's going to happen with the market. If you ask anybody 12 months ago what was going to happen to the market, not a single person said a global pandemic would occur. And 100% of these economists and theorists would have been, incorrect. So dude, I just don't even pay attention to that. I just keep my head down. I do the work. I make sure that that we're focused on revenue generating activities, staying close to the revenue line, and we don't get too far away from that. And then we're just always refining our operations.
Yeah, and we'll take some questions after this, but one of the things I just want to say is that I think a lot of people, I just want to hit on what you just talked about. Number one is that for some reason, we have this thought that makes us feel good inside that if we work hard, we will be successful. But the reality is there's no correlation to being successful to hard work. I mean, if that was the case, construction workers and day laborers would be the wealthiest people on the planet. And we all know that deep down. We know that that's not true, but we think that if I'm just busy all day being reactive and being a ping pong all day long, that at the end of the day, I should magically have moved forward. But if you don't have any focus and any intention, then that's not going to happen. And it's a lie we tell ourselves, I think, that, hey, I'm just going to be busy. I don't know what I'm doing, but as long as I look busy, I can tell people I'm busy. I can get thumbs up on Facebook and Instagram and pats on the back from fake people that don't know me. But at the end of the day, I still am the same place I'm in. So that's the thing about being busy. I think a lot of people, the other thing, talking about cyclical, look, you and I have been in real estate a long time. Real estate, like everything in history, is a cycle. Two things I can guarantee: the market's going to go up and the market's going to crash. When those happen, I have no idea, and nobody does, and they're lying if they say they're due, because that's not reality. We don't know. We know it's going to happen. And the last thing I'll say is part of this is what I've learned most people never talk about, and they never even think about, is what is their exit strategy when they get into a deal. I ask so many people, how are you going to exit that deal? They look at me like I've got a second head I just grew. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what's your exit strategy? Yeah. I'm like, dying with your property is an exit strategy. If you want to keep it forever, that is. But what is the goal and how do you exit? And nobody ever thinks about that as part of the plan. They're like, I'm just going to buy this. Well, shit, you can buy a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean you're getting closer to your goal. And once you get to the goal, how do you exit so you realize what it is you're getting out of it? And so many people don't do that. And I'd like to segue into, you and I talked a lot about, you wrote children's books, right? About building wealth. And, my son at 14 years old, he bought his first rental property. And, a lot of people will come to me and they say, how did he get a rental property? How did he get a loan? How did he get on MLS? How this, how that, how did he sign a contract? I'm like, you're asking me the wrong questions. You shouldn't be asking me how. You should be asking me, why did a 14-year-old kid come to me and say, I want to learn to create my own passive income and create my own wealth? It's not a how question. It's a why question. And you and I talked about this with your book and everything. So I'm curious, what got you into writing children's books? And I know you and I think along the same lines, but what's the concept behind it?
Yeah, man, I think, have you ever seen, first of all, you made a lot of good points, right? Like, if you worked hard, I think back to the Christmas Vacation movie, and as you're talking about this, I'm thinking as they're standing outside about to turn on the lights, and he goes to plug it in and it doesn't work, and the mother-in-law goes, what a silly waste of resources, and the daughter goes, well, you worked really hard, Grandma. And then the grandpa goes, well, so do washing machines. That's so true, right? Like, a lot of other people, working hard is not enough. You have to work smart. You have to focus on the things that actually matter in any given activity. So that, and then to your other point on the marketplace, dude, there's good deals today and there's bad deals today.
Absolutely.
There were good deals a year ago and there were bad deals a year ago. There will be good deals a year from now and there will be bad deals a year from now. There is always opportunity and there was always struggle or downside. So I think as long as you understand that and you again are very disciplined in your buying criteria and your business model, I think you can ride out any sort of cycle. So a couple thoughts there. And then to your point, the kids' books. So Little Legacy Library is my children's book series, littlelegacylibrary.com. You can check them out. But essentially, I was sitting on a plane coming back from a real estate conference in 2017. And my daughter was 2 at the time. And I'm reading The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. And I was just in the preface or the first chapter. And I'm like, damn, these are some really, really good strategies and thought processes and philosophies. And I'm getting it at the age of 31, 32 years old back then. And I was like, can you imagine if I would have gotten this in college? Can you imagine if I would have gotten this when I was my daughter's age? I was like, how can I convey these thought principles to my daughter? So she just thinks this way her entire life, you know? And I got all excited about it because most of us, we go through life through the traditional school system, which trains us to be compliant, busy workers, busy bees for working
employees. Yeah, employees.
Yeah. Hey, show up before the bell rings. Move to the next workstation when the bell rings. Go home when the bell rings. Don't ask to, get permission to go to the bathroom. Get permission to speak. Get permission to this and that.
Don't work as a team. Work in isolation.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many different elements that are imprinted in us and we're programmed with that we don't know any better. And our parents probably didn't know any better either because they come from that generation. And so, but then we have to reprogram ourselves when we get out of school. And if we don't reprogram ourselves, then we go to work for somebody else. Like, you think being an entrepreneur is hard? Like, you know what's really hard is working for somebody else for the next 40 years to retire on less money than you couldn't already live off of for the first 40 years. That's hard work, you know? And so I'm like, how do I convey these thought principles of achievement and winning and not necessarily like wealth principles also, but really just achievement principles. Like, if my daughter wants to be a ballerina, I just want her to be the best ballerina. I want her to like really strive for achievement and highest level success, because I think that, you get more fulfillment out of life if you're always pushing the limits. And so I got off that airplane after reading that book, and I started Google searching different books on personal development for children. And there was a lot of stuff out there about, the golden rule and treating others how you want to be treated and being nice and being respectful and things like that. And there were even a couple books on like working hard, but there was nothing based on like the thought principles of Think and Grow Rich, of how to win friends and influence people, of
generational wealth, how to create the generational wealth and the abundance mindset. Exactly.
So I took those classic personal development books and I essentially created children's versions of them. So instead of Think and Grow Rich, we have Think Big and Go to Baseball Camp. That was our first book. Instead of How to Win Friends and Influence People, we have How to Win Class President and Influence Peers. The next one is based off of Richest Man in Babylon. It's The Richest Kid in the Neighborhood. And that'll be out probably next month. So we have a bunch of really, really powerful, thoughtful, we pulled the best strategies, ideas, and philosophies out of each of those books and then put them into our kids' book, rewrote the story. They're illustrated books, and they're really good, right? Like I had the idea, but really my wife and one of my good female friends from high school wrote the books. And so I can brag on how good they are because I didn't technically write them myself. They wrote them, but I get these amazing messages from friends and people on Facebook who have bought the books and they read them once to their kids. And then all of a sudden their kid starts, a lemonade stand, or they start a boat washing or golf cart washing stand. And they start going and generating revenue and realizing that they don't have to wait to go get a job when they're 14 years old and make minimum wage. Now they're realizing, oh, I can go start my own business. Oh, I can determine my own wealth. I can actually dictate my own value instead of somebody else telling me what I'm worth. Like, I think that is a profound concept. And, it's you don't make any money from books, so it's not about the money. Yeah. It's about the impact that you can make and the difference you can make in future generations. And I think if you help other people make money and you help other people, influence their future and change their family tree, like that's what true legacy is about.
It's so funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking it brought up some memories. When my son was younger, when he was like 11, 12, I'd be in the car and I'd be listening to these podcasts, Andy Frisella, Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, all these guys. And, and I'm just listening to them, it's just in my head all the time. And he would sit in the car with me and he would, he never really said anything. He was just listening. And one day we're in the car and I'm taking him to the gym and taking his friend to the gym with me. And we're in the car and his friend, my son's name is Jet. And so his friend says, "Hey, Jet, is that the guy that you listen to on the radio all the time?" And he just shakes his head. He doesn't say a word. He just shakes his head. And I thought, wow, I never really thought that he listened. Because I always thought it was just for me. And he's, just sitting there looking out the window or whatever 12-year-olds do. And what I used to do is chores. So we used to have Grant Cardone University. So Grant Cardone has a great thing about motivation. It's like 100 ways to stay motivated. And so what I would do is that was part of his chores. They're little 5-minute clips. And he had to listen to a 5-minute clip every day about being motivated. And you don't realize these things that just keep going. So after he bought his rental property, and I mean, of course, it's like rented it within 4 days, no problems with the tenants, picture perfect deal, you know. And he's like, oh, this is easy. And I'm like, yeah. So when he's in school and he's talking to his teachers and he's in like this money class, and this teacher's giving him advice about money. And he says, oh, you know, he's asking, do you have a job? To ask my son, do you have a job? My son's like, no, I don't have a job. He's like, what do you do to get money? And he says, well, I've got a rental property. And the teacher's like, what do you mean? And he's like, I have a rental property. It was just like, you could see the look. He's like, Dad, the look on the teacher's face. He's like, I don't even have a rental property. How did you get one? He's like, did your parents buy it for you? He's like, no, I bought it. And it was just like, he said, Dad, he goes, it was just like, it clicked. The guy was like, holy crap. Like, this kid owns a rental property and he's making, you know, $500 a month on this rental. And I don't even have one. And I'm like, that's the difference, son. I'm like, that is what you're learning. You're learning something that, you know, it's generational wealth. I could buy, look, we could give our kids all of our assets and they could lose them, but giving them that knowledge to be able to do that and showing them that, like, look, this works, you know? And I mean, the power of thinking and being around these kinds of, you know, you and I are very similar. We love being around higher people than ourselves. We want to elevate, you know? And I remember when I was in the car with him, I would tell him, like, I'm going to be speaking with these guys one day. And, you know, I would just, that's a affirmation of mine that I want to be on stages. And next month I get to speak with Ed Milet, Randy Couture, and Brad Lee on stage. So I'm like, it works, you know? And so my whole point is that I think what you're doing is you're planting some amazing seeds in these kids' heads that is going to ruminate. And over time, I don't even think you realize it could be the next Elon Musk. You know what I mean? You don't realize what you're giving them. So it's very, very profound what you're doing. And I'm very super impressed by your passion of it. And I hope you keep doing it, man. I really do.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's definitely work, you know, and it's hard to dedicate time to it when you make so much money over here. And it's hard to dedicate time then to non-revenue generating things, you know? Yeah. So like that's why I brought on partners. I was like, this isn't going to get done unless I bring in other people to actually write these books. And you know, I'm involved in the process in that capacity. But the girls do such an amazing job, and like all the characters are named after the titans of industry. So like there's Ford, there's Morgan is the little like firecracker girl. There's Rocky off of Rockefeller. There's Andrew based off of Carnegie. There's a bunch of different like little you know plays and kind of tips of the hat to people who have really influenced industry over time. And you know it's and then there's action steps at the very end, so that way you can talk and take action with your kid on, you know, think about some of the principles and thinking about some of the concepts, and then actually go and setting goals and actually going and doing some of these activities in order to kind of get their wheels turning and turn it into more than just reading a book, actually the action steps that come with it, with the philosophy, right? You get those two things, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So no, man, it's a big passion piece for us, and I'm trying to think of like how can we make it more impactful and how can we kind of spread the word. So I really appreciate you bringing it up. First of all, I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, it's cool, and we're just trying to get the word out, you know.
Well, this is kind of my beef with investors and entrepreneurs. And I say this very respectfully to people, but I think we can be very selfish people. And what I mean by that is we go to these classes, right? We're on Bigger Pockets. We go to forums, we go to events, we learn all of this information, right? It's all in our head, and we don't share it with the people that we're actually trying to do it for. So we have family, loved ones. We're doing this for them, and we never share that knowledge with them. So we hoard that information in our heads, and we kind of feel like it's incumbent upon us that we have to bear the cross, and we've got to do all this work because I'm going to do this because I'm taking my time. And these other people go, I don't know what he's doing. He went to a real estate seminar, and now he's doing this. He's wrapping something, or he's subject toing, or he's in this, or he's doing that. And you're not sharing that information, and they have no idea, but you're actually doing it for these people. And so if you think about it, how are you passing that down so that, number one, they understand what you're doing. Number two, they're involved in it and they're encouraging you. And it can be a much better experience than doing it all yourself. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I did it. And your family and everyone's gone because they're like, I don't know what you do all day. You're just in this room, talking to people on these things. So I think what you're doing is great because you're almost like breaking them out of that mold to say, okay, you know what? You need to teach your children this. This is important. I mean, creating wealth that dies with you, what's the point? You got to create that generational wealth that keeps on living. That's just my opinion. That's why I wanted to make sure we talked about this because I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs fall into that trap.
Yeah, and I don't think it's I'm big into legacy, right? Like my holding companies, Legacy Wealth Holdings, my masterminds, Legacy Family, like my books are little legacy libraries. So like I'm big into legacy. That's kind of like my key word. And I think a lot of people think legacy is passing down money, passing down estate, passing down properties. To me, it's passing down the mindset. Like the best compliment I can get from my kids as they grow older is, hey, Dad, I don't need your money. You know why? Because you taught me how to make it myself. Like that, I just got the chills thinking about it, like that would be so powerful if they came to me and said that to me one day of like, Dad, go give all your money away because I'm going to go and do it bigger.
I don't need it. Yeah, I don't need it. Like you taught me how to do it. I don't need it. And what's funny is I had my son with me on a podcast show one time. And so they asked him, they said, what did you learn from buying this rental property? And I never asked him that question. So I didn't know what he was going to answer. And he said, you know what? He said, I have an understanding of how money works. And I understand that I'm understanding how transactions work and, people paying for a service and me making money on top of that. And he articulated it much different, but I was like, wow, that's like, I didn't even know that he took that out from buying a property. And because he was learning and I made him do all the homework. He had to analyze the numbers. He had to tell me why it was a good deal. And so I made him do the work. So he had to learn all that. And, when you teach a kid who's 14 years old about real estate, he doesn't know the word mortgage. He doesn't know what a deed is. So you have to actually teach these rudimentary things. And all of a sudden I'm like, what does that mean? I'm not really sure. But I had to explain it to him like, okay, this is where it starts. He just thought, oh, I rent this property for $1,600. I'm making $1,600 this month. I'm like, doesn't quite work that way. Let me explain where this money goes. But he learned how money works in transactions. And to me, I'm like, I could never have taught that way. He learned it on his own. And I thought that was pretty cool for him to learn that. So I do see we've got a couple questions. So I want to, if you guys have questions, please ask us. I know we've been jabbering away, but I see Chris over on Facebook is saying he's got a full-time job, 38 years old, wants to get into real estate. What route would you suggest to break in part-time at first?
I think it goes back to just doing a deal, just pulling the trigger on something, like we all know the 1% rule. I think most people do. But Chris, if you can go buy a property and you can be all in and rent it, the monthly rent being 1% of what you're all into the property for. So if you can generate at least $1,000 a month in rent, you can buy it and renovate that property for about $100,000. It's going to cash flow at least enough to cover all the operating expenses and any sort of debt service that you have on it and probably put some cash in your pocket. So if you can go out and do that, exactly how Steve's kid, learned all these different things. It's from doing the deal, right? It's not from reading about it in a book. It's not from going to seminars. It's not from going to classes. It's not from watching podcasts even. It's from going out and doing the actual activity. Get outside your comfort zone. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It rents for $900, it rents for $500, it rents for $800. You sell, you buy it, and you're like, oh, well, I could lose $100,000. No, that's not the risk. The risk is, what if you turn around and sold it for $90,000 and you lost 10 grand? Like, you're not really going to lose it's not $100,000 risk. You know what I mean? And no, yeah. Does anybody want to lose 10 grand? Nobody wants to lose 10 grand. But like, I mean, shit, dude, I spent $100,000 on college and I don't use any of that. Right. So
yeah.
I learned my education and I don't use any of it. I learned far more from reading books and going and buying my first rental property than I could in 4 years of college.
And what's interesting is a lot of people, when I talk to people, new in real estate, they all tell me what could go wrong. They'll tell me all the reasons why it won't work. And even if they've never done it. And I'm thinking, okay, you've just told me all the reasons it won't work. let's look at the other side of the coin, because there are reasons it will work. We all know very successful people in real estate. So we all agree it works. So it takes just as much energy to think about what could go wrong as opposed to what could go right. And look, I am first, I will say that when I had probably about 30, 40 properties that were not performing and they were just bleeding me dry, they were killing me to death. I didn't know what to do with them. And I mean, they were losing money. They were just horrible deals, right? And we could not figure out this part of our portfolio, we just could not figure it out. And I was talking to this one guy and he goes, man, why don't you just sell them? And I go, I can't sell them. I'm going to lose money. And he says, what do you think you're doing every month? He's like, it's killing you with a spoon. He's like, just rip off the Band-Aid and be done with it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that. And what I will tell you is the mental stress of doing that and putting yourself through all that negative talk, as opposed to just like you said, who cares if you lose money? It's not an identifier of how smart or successful you are. It's an identifier of what you don't do next time. That's really what it is. Rip off the Band-Aid, say, okay, I learned something. I took a kick to the face. I'm fine. I'm going to get back up and I'm going to go at it again. And that's all it is. And nobody cares. No one's going to judge you. You're going to judge yourself probably more than anyone, right? We all don't want to look dumb or feel dumb, but nobody cares. At the end of the day, they're going to go, yeah, you lost some money. Big freaking deal. Get in line. We all lose money. Learn what you don't do and don't do it again and move on to the next deal.
Mm-hmm. Dude, two profound statements that you made during that is one is don't focus on the bad, focus on the positive, right? Like you realize, I think we talked about this the first time that we even connected, was like faith and fear are the exact same thing. They're both believing in something, a story in our head that has not yet come to pass. Yeah. It's fake. It's never happened. It was like faith and fear. The difference is one's positive and one's negative. If it's a story in our own head, then guess who gets to make the decision if it's going to be positive or negative? Us. Yep. We get to decide if we're going to go the positive route or the negative route. So when you understand that and you have the awareness that the garbage you're telling yourself is your own garbage, and you can change it, you can change the narrative to be positive. And instead of focusing, is a contractor gonna steal money from you? Yes, it's gonna happen. Is a tenant not gonna pay rent? Are you gonna have to evict them? Are they gonna screw up the part? Yes, it's gonna happen. Is a seller gonna lie to you every single time, right? Is your financier gonna back out at the last minute? Probably once or twice. You know, like there's all these bad, hey, that's gonna happen, right? But you know what else is gonna happen? You can build generational wealth that changes your family's financial future forever. You can go visit places, exotic locations that people only read about in magazines. You can go and send your kids to any school that you want. You can retire your spouse. You can retire your parents. You can build a fortress around your family, a financial fortress that nothing can ever get through. Like, think about that. You can give back to churches, build hospitals. You can do anything you possibly want. You can't do any of those things if you don't have money, right? It's more noble to make more money because you can make a bigger impact. So think about all the positive things that you can do, not the negative side. All that negative shit is going to happen. Number two is exactly what you said. You get better every single time. What I see people doing is they get started in something and they take a couple lumps on their first couple of deals, and then all of a sudden, hey, this isn't for me. It's too hard. Do you realize that the longer you're in something, the better you get at it, the easier it gets, to the point where after you put in those 10,000 hours, about 3, 4, 5 years worth of work, full-time effort, you become an expert in whatever field you're in. And now it's not, I mean, hey, Steve, this is for you, buddy. An airplane, getting it off the ground, right? There's a lot of fuel that's used up just getting the airplane off the ground. But once you're up in the air and you don't have, you know, all that pressure against it, it's pumping the gas a little bit, and all of a sudden, like, you don't have to work nearly as hard. I can tell you that I do not lose money on deals because I've already lost money on all the small deals. So now I do big deals and I can't lose money. People can't pull the wool over my eyes because I've already been through everything. I've been through the bad tenants, the bad contractors, the bad sellers, the bad financiers, the bad private money lenders, the bad management companies, the bad everything. Yeah. And now, unless somebody like specifically defrauds me out of a deal or on my acquisition of a deal, it's the only time they can pull one over. And guess what? Even that's happened to me before. So now there's certain things in my contract that say you can't defraud me, otherwise I can come after you, right? So like, it doesn't matter what they try to do. the more experience you have, the tighter you run your operation, the more dialed in you are, and the more profitable you are, because you don't go through those learning experiences after you get to a certain level, because you know what to expect across the board. So you're buying the right deals, you're renovating the right way, you're putting the right management in place, you're putting the right tenants in place, you're putting the right financing in place, you're handling with these certain risk mitigation strategies. There's a lot of different things that you learn over the course of time that you don't know early on, and that's okay. You don't need to know everything. Just start out with doing a small deal, buy a single family house. You'll learn so much that you'll be able to go buy a duplex or a fourplex or an 8-unit or a 15-unit, and then you organically grow your portfolio. And as you organically grow your portfolio, you can qualify for bigger deals. You make more money, right? You can now sponsor your own loans. You can now bring your own cash. You have more credibility with your private money investors to then lend you cash on your deals because they see your experience. I see somebody had a question like Brad. He says, hey, how do you get brokers to send you off-market deals that they only send out to the big players? You don't get those unless you've shown a track record, right? Like the reason brokers send those to the top 10 buyers in town is because they have a track record. And you think you're going to go toe to toe, you don't own any doors and I own 4,000, and we're going to, I mean, even if you come in at a higher price, the seller's going with me because I have a track record of closing on those deals. So as a newbie, here's what I did. I went and organically built a portfolio. I bought an 8-unit. You know, before I could buy an 18-unit, I had to buy an 8-unit. Before I could buy an 80-unit, I had to buy an 18-unit. Before I could buy 800 units, I had to buy 80 units, right? Like it's hard to raise money for 800 units if you've never done it for 8 before. So just go out and build the momentum. Just start doing deals, and eventually you'll be seen as somebody who transacts. You'll get the reputation as somebody who goes out and does deals and closes and follows through on their word and what they say that they're going to do. And that is how you do it. I know we all want instant success, right? Like we got instant rice, we got instant pudding, we got instant everything, you know, fast food.
5-minute abs. I want 5-minute abs.
Exactly. Hey, I want 4-minute abs, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy. They could never do it in 4. But you know, I look, man, I agree. And you know, the thing is fear is a emotional decision based on a past experience that never even happened, right? You're making a future decision on something that happened in the past. And I think the deal is, you know, bad things happen to good people all the time. You know, you get ripped off, you get stolen from, you know, people who have never smoked their whole life get lung cancer. I mean, shit happens, right? That's life, right? There's nothing written that says we should be given something. Nobody deserves anything. I love when people say like, I bought it because I deserve it. Really? You think you deserve that? Who said who? Who says that, right? And they don't want to, a lot of people don't want to put in the work. They want that fast track. And the reality is, you know, business doesn't get any easier. You get better. And so it's not, look, at the end of the day, I would say that you probably have the same things happen to you today that happened to you on day one. That complex, 4 walls and a roof, is probably still the same 4 walls and a roof it was 20 years ago. How you handle and adjust and deal with those challenges is different. So you have changed. The property hasn't changed. It didn't become magically different. It's not a rainbow that's farting out Skittles every day. It is still 4 walls and a roof. You just look at it differently. And now, like you said, now you're a champion, so you can handle what's coming because of your experience. So I just, when you were saying like people want this fast track, you wouldn't even know what a good deal is because you don't have the experience to see what to do with it. And if I had a deal, I'd go, why would I give it to him when I could give it to him? Because I know he's a sure bet. This person I don't know. So you have to put in the work, folks. That's my point. There is no fast track. And anyone that says there is, they're lying to you, because all of us that have been out there grinding it for the last 20 plus years, we have all been kicked in the face, punched, lied to, stolen from. But the difference is we get back up every single time and we don't quit. And we just say, you know what? It's just part of our business. This is just Monday. And you know what? The kicks hurt less. You know, like you had said earlier, 10,000 times. You know, someone who does martial arts, they do one kick 10,000 times, not 10,000 kicks one time. So you've got to be focused in what you're doing. And just so much that you said resonated, because so many people have no idea how to get up and grind every day and put in that work and do the dirt and do what it takes. Because now, look, you like me, we can look at any deal and be like you and I probably look at deals differently, right? Because we have different experiences. But we both look at things and go, you know what? Yes, no, no, yes, very easily. And they're going to go, wow, how'd you know that? Did you read a book on golfing? No, I get out there and I golf every freaking day. That's how I know how to do it. You know, like you said, swimming. It just blows my mind when I hear people say that. I just don't get it. So I know we got a couple more questions. Someone's asking about, Ryan is asking, does the 1% rule also apply to multifamily, 5, 10, 50, 100 units?
Yeah, so I do the same. So my entire business model is based off of residential because I come from the residential world, right? Like I used to do the BRRRR method, and that's what I do with my apartment buildings now. So I buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then I hold on to it long term. The difference is there's hundreds of units instead of 2 units, you know, or a single family house. And I run the numbers the same way. Now the stabilized value is about 1% of what I'm all into it for. I don't buy things at retail price. I think when you're trying to build the momentum, you just get base hits, right? Like base hits is what wins ball games. You don't have to hit a home run every single time. What's more important early on is building up the momentum and gaining the experience. And all of a sudden, a double comes along. And then all of a sudden, you know, to Steve's point, a triple comes along, a home run, or even a grand slam comes along. But you're not going to hit grand slams unless you're swinging the bat. You got to go out and just do base hits. And the minimum threshold for a deal is that 1% rule. If you can get 1.5% rent on what you're all in per unit, that's a hell of a deal. That's a really good deal. Or anything above 1% is really, really strong, especially when it's a long-term hold. You know, it's not like apartments are a little bit different in that you're holding on to it to build wealth over time. So there's actually, if you need to flip it, you need to be very careful because that's like a snapshot in time. If you're doing it, if you're looking to hold it long term, like any deal that I do, I can essentially screw up by $400,000 or $4 million. And if I plan on holding this building for the next 30 years, guess what? It's a $75,000 a year mistake. It doesn't even matter because the cash flow ends up like absorbing all of it over time, and appreciation and natural appreciation and rent growth and the depreciation from the tax advantages. Like it all absorbs all of that. So the sexy thing about buying and holding rental properties, whether it's a single family or a 100-unit apartment building, is that it can absorb a lot of the mess ups over time. That's why I buy for cash flow and not try to speculatively flip properties, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, time has a way of healing all your mistakes, you know? So like you said, I've got, you know, I coach and mentor people, and I got a guy that I'm working with, and he's looking to buy something in Florida. And his challenge is that he's so experienced. He's like, I hate that I have to pay full price for these deals because I know I can get them cheaper. And so, you know, he's not able to find the deals because he has certain numbers in his head that he knows too much. And so as we were talking, I told him, I said, listen, let me ask you a question. I said, if you were to bought any of these properties 10 years ago and you paid full pop for them, would you be ahead right now? And he's like, oh yeah, I'd be way ahead. I'm like, you just answered your own question. I'm like, 10 years from now, you're not even going to matter. This conversation would be obsolete 10 years from now if you bought these properties today. Again, what's the goal? What's the strategy? And how do we get there? And that's what, you know, and he was like, you know what? He's like, wow, you're right. I never thought about that. I'm like, you're trying to base your business model on numbers that are 2-3 years old. I'm like, the market is what the market is. You got to go with what the market is. Yeah, I get it. It was cheaper, but it's definitely going to be cheaper than what it is 30 years from now. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles. You couldn't touch the houses that when I grew up in Los Angeles back then, but that's not what the market is now. I could never find that deal. You got to do it with what the market bears today. And that's basically what you're saying. Time has a way of healing all these mistakes.
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that you subtly alluded to, but didn't like outright say, but the reason you're successful, Steve, is because you have a mindset of 10 years down the road. Yeah. So many people are looking at today. I don't look at today. Like on my first 250 units that I did, I gave up 70% of those deals. I gave it to other people. I gave up 70% of the equity to other people. Why? Because I realized it wasn't about this deal. This deal set me up for the next deal. This deal gave me the portfolio size, gave me the net worth, gave me the liquidity, gave me the experience to go and turn this other deal into a home run and a grand slam, right? So I think everybody but here's the thing. Here's the beauty of it. Like I told you, I built my portfolio over the past 5 years. Now I've been in real estate longer than that, and I have some experience, and took a lot of lumps for the first. I was really shitty at real estate in the first 7 years. Got really good about 5-6 years ago, right? And but I built my portfolio in 5 years, $350 million, right? And 335 is actually the value as of today. So $335 million value in 5 years. It's not like 40 years. It's a season of your life to go and collect a bunch of property. And then to your point, you sit on it, you let it cash flow, you let it appreciate over time, you let principal pay down occur. And all of a sudden, 20 years, 30 years down the road, you own all the property free and clear. And chances are it'll double in value over the next 30 years. So let's say you pick up $10 million of property over the next couple of years. Now it's worth $20 million 10 years from now, and you don't owe anything on it. You have a net worth of $20 million with massive amounts of cash flow, and you can always refinance it, pull a bunch of cash back out, tax-free, and then do it for another 30 years if you wanted to. That's the beauty of owning rental real estate. Yeah. It's remarkable, man.
You're preaching to the choir, brother. I get it, man. I agree, man. This is a long-term chess match of strategy. This is not a short checkers game. And a lot of people think that they're going to play checkers, and they call themselves investors, and they're like, man, I've been doing this for like 3 weeks, and I don't have that Ferrari. I don't get it. Like, this isn't working, and they just don't understand that this is, it's very slow. Real estate is like a slug, man. The people that are wealthy, the ones that I know, like, and people that are like uber wealthy, they're like, I don't do that shit. I don't even worry about that stuff. They're like, I'm looking so far. I'm looking for my children's children is what I'm buying for. And so that's what I'm trying to do. They're like, I don't like me. I'm fine. I make enough money. I'm good. I want to set up my grandchildren. And we don't, again, we don't think about that. And that's why I'm so impressed by what you're doing. So Tim, believe it or not, we have been on for a freaking hour, man. I'm glad your phone lasted for sure. That's number one. Hey, yeah, okay. Hey, listen, man, I love everything you're doing. If somebody wants to follow you and get to know you and maybe buy your children's book and get to know, how do they find you and learn some of this knowledge that you have?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Well, again, amazing conversation. Always a blast talking with you. I know we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and it's not an accident, like there's a few philosophies that if you live by and if you follow, like, you will attract wealth into your life and attract success in your life. And so it's guys like us hanging out in the right circles and hanging out and bouncing ideas off of each other and strategies off each other and flexing each other's mindset and challenging each other. Like, that's what the game changer is, Yeah. And so it's awesome having a chat with you, man. I really appreciate you having me. If you guys want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Facebook, connect with me on Instagram and on Facebook. And I answer all my own messages. Like, if you got a question, feel free to fire it over. I don't always respond one-on-one. A lot of times I do, but I'll at least make a video of it and maybe create some content. I'm always trying to put out value and help other people. I truly believe that wealth is like sunshine. We talked about this too. Like, you getting sunshine takes no sunshine away from me. And actually, it doesn't create competitors by showing people how I do what I do. It actually creates more collaboration. We're able to do deals together. I can bring money to your project. You can get into a deal that you couldn't have gotten into before. Same thing with me. And so, a rising tide floats all boats. And I think a lot of us can build a lot of wealth together. And I think there's limitless amounts of it. So, hit me up, connect with me on social media. That's the best place to connect with me. If you want to check out the kids' books, that's called littlelegacylibrary.com. And, man, again, appreciate you having me. I love what you're doing. I love your mindset, and I love that we're buddies now.
Yeah, awesome. And what is your Instagram handle for people that want to follow you?
It's at Tim Bratz.
At Tim Bratz, Bratz for those of you. And for those of you who want to follow me, I didn't write a children's book, but I did write a book, but not a children's book. But you can follow me at Rosenberg Steve, ROZENBERG Steve, or you can go to my website, steverosenberg.com. There I've got all my stuff if you want to follow me and watch me and learn from me and all that stuff. But anyways, listen, Tim, as always, brother, appreciate it. I can't wait to talk to you again. Hopefully we'll be able to do something in person like we talked about together at an event or something. And obviously, to Bigger Pockets, love the fact that they give us this opportunity to share so much knowledge with some people. I love the fact that you and I get a platform like this to share and just give back, because to me, that's what this is all about. So, Tim, on behalf of myself, Bigger Pockets, everybody, thank you for being on. Everybody, thank you for watching. Next week, I'm going to be back with who am I going to have next week? I forget who I'm going to have. I got another rock star next week. We'll see who it's going to be. But Tim, as always, brother, thank you. And everybody, we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.